Hello there, thank you for coming back to my channel. In my video series, I'm building out an expedition camper, and this is my DIY expedition camper. We're on to video number 64 of this video series. And today we're going to get in a little more details on how I'm building out my cabinetry with 80/20 and some of the tips and tricks that I use to connect them together, but also really get them not just strong, but level with each other, particularly when it comes to things like drawer slides. And so a lot of what I've been doing is, of course, using these end connectors, but also the external corner connectors. But installing the end connectors, yes, you got to tap the ends or have them tap for you. And then, of course, screw in these end connector fasteners, which are very inexpensive, lightweight, so great for vehicle, and easy to install once the ends are tapped, and they are incredibly strong. And of course, all I have to do once I get those end fasteners in there is have an open end of another profile to simply slide these in and slide them all the way down. Now, once you do get these profiles that are attached perpendicularly to the other profile slid down with that end fastener in its final place, then of course you do need also an access hole to be able to tighten these down to access that 1/4-20 bolt, in this case with 1-inch profiles, or 5/16 bolt with a 1.5-inch profile, to be able to access it so you can tighten it down. And the great thing about these connections or end fastener connectors is that they actually pull the two pieces together. So I do have a drilled in here a roughly 1/4-inch hole through the center of that profile, right through the tracks or the grooves that are in those, and drilled in there, and that allows me to access that end fastener, that 1/4-20 bolt, with a simple hex end fastener. And I can go ahead and tighten it up real tightly. Now, what happens if I don't have that already in there on the end of a profile or somewhere in place, or I don't know exactly where it's going to go until I already have these installed? And that is the case here. So go ahead and drill it in place, or I call it in sucho. And so I go ahead and take my 1/4-inch drill bit, or even something a little bit smaller, because it just needs to be big enough for the hex end bit of that to go through, which is a smaller bit, and just drill it through the center of the profile here all the way through, and then you'll have that access point once you know exactly where it's going to be. I drill 1/4-inch holes, even though they're a little bit bigger than needed, so I have a little bit of wiggle room from side to side if needed, but once I tighten this up, it is solid. All right, so putting in drawer slides with 80/20 framing, this is how I do it. I go ahead and I get my digital level meter here on the slide itself, and I make sure I get it level. And really level might be that's maybe slightly off level because it's matching up with what the floor is or the rest of the cabinet, or something else. But I want to make sure that really this frame here that's going to support my drawer slide, it's going to mount to this, and my cabinet, my drawers will be inside of here, is going to be level as possible. From side to side, of course, absolutely, so the drawer doesn't get wonky or hung up in there, and that everything slides really smoothly, in there, so that the slide mounts are exactly at the same height from the floor on each side, and also at the same level on each side. And that's pretty key. And then also there's no binding up, like here too, where this piece isn't sticking out some, so that everything's flush and so forth. And of course, this piece here has to also be vertical as well. So there's a lot of, and the rear has to be vertical, and the distance between this vertical and this vertical is exactly the same top and bottom, because sometimes they'll waver just slightly in or out, and then that means that your drawer slide gets tight or wonky as it goes up or down. So I really try to make sure that all these pieces are perfectly parallel or perpendicular to each other. And this little digital meter here really helps to do that. And I can change it in different orientations here. I can also go in this orientation. Well, it doesn't hold there, of course, and it has a magnet on the bottom, so it holds very well, incredibly well. It's hard to get that off. But I can also check my level this way, and so this is a 1-degree tilt this way, which is pretty much consistent. I haven't quite got this level yet, but that's pretty much consistent throughout. So as I'm leveling these up, I check all that to keep it consistent. This is off by a little tilt this way, because the whole vehicle is tilting this way, because the back end is still sticking up because there's not enough weight in the back end. So I still got this sticking up. And I can verify this as my reference point against the floor here. See, 1.1 degrees in that same direction, 1.1 degrees in that same direction. So that allows me to make sure everything's basically perfectly parallel and level with each other. So these little digital meters are really great for this, for doing that stuff. And that's how I keep all these things level as I'm building this up. The key really here is with the like I said, the drawer slides, because those won't, you know, they really need to be pretty precise when it comes to side, distance from front to back, and also level from side to side as well. So there you go. There's a little tip for you. That's one thing to really make sure you check and get really level within your camper. And again, check it to a reference plane such as the floor or a wall, and just keep that consistent as far as that reference plane goes, and that'll help you get this thing in there. So pretty exciting. That got a washer and dryer getting framed in, and I got this kitchen cabinet now starting to get framed in too. So another hour or so, we should have this pretty well in this bottom section here, pretty well built out. It's just getting all the drawer slides in now. I've got the top open, so I can slide down the connectors for the drawer slides on both sides and get that in. And you can see here too, I got a little bit of padding between the washer and dryer and the frame here. This frame is actually holding the washer and dryer in. It's essentially compressing it from both sides. So I've cut this so it's perfectly the width of this. And I got some really thin foam in here. And this little tiny thin foam in here is thin intentionally because this washer and dryer actually needs no space, no setback at all on the sides, top or bottom, and only needs some on the back. And that's of course predominantly for the hoses and connection stuff, which are coming out here right now. I'll route these again. I'll get them in final position once these are all done. But this little bit of foam, which makes sure that any little vibration or so between the steel washer and dryer and aluminum framing here holding in place, just that there's no real like vibration, and that's a little bit of wearing of the paint and or rusting over time. So I've done the same thing on the front side up here too, and I'm also going to have 2 more drawer slides as we go up, so they'll hold it in this way, and then some supports across the top that'll really brace this thing completely in. So it's going to get together. It's a lot of framing to do. It's a little tedious work here, but once this gets done, then I can order up my drawers for those exact dimensions. But also in here, I've got to figure out where I'm going to put my air conditioning compressor, and water pump, and accumulator, and a few things that are going to go in here. So we'll get to those soon. All right, so what happens when you insert a drop-in nut into a vertical channel and it slides, well, often it slides down. That's a problem. So, like for example here, I have an enclosed top here, this vertical piece coming down, and I need to get a nut so I can attach this piece into here. Okay, so if I put this nut in here, fortunately it's only going to fall down to here, but it obviously could get a little bit of challenge getting out. But if this wasn't here, it could fall way down the bottom. In this case, back here behind the tanks, it disappears. So here's my little trick that I do. It's a little tricky on working on it and the camera at the same time, but I insert a piece of tape in there, just a little piece of painter's tape, some cheap tape, and its purpose is to hold this in place. And another thing to think about too is which way to do the hole, because the hole is offset from the center along this piece. In this case, I'm going to put it so the hole's in the top, and the reason why is because then I can push it a little bit up from the bottom more easily into where the hole's going to be if need be, and or not have to drop it as far. And so that goes in there. Those don't always really hold quite in place very well, and so that helps me to get it in its final position. And then what I'll do is I'll lower this down till I get basically those holes lined up, tighten up the other side here where it's pretty much lined up, so I don't have to do a lot of fussing with it on this other side. And then all I should have to do, because it's hard to get in here and reach around here and bending over all this framing and plumbing and everything else in here and seeing what's going on. So now see how easy that was held in place. It wasn't going to drop out if I didn't quite get the framing just right. And now I can get that tightened into place. And now I'll go ahead and do my measurements to make sure, and level, to make sure that this piece is exactly at the same height as the piece on the other side that's going to support this drawer. And so from here to here, and are also exactly level with each other too. So that's one of my little tricks on how to do this. And I'll show you another little trick to get these drawer slides level from side to side, or to make it easier on yourself. And that one is really use the bracketing to help set the height and level these. So I'll give you an example. Over here I have a gusseted corner in this corner to help support the bottom of this piece. It's locked in from this channel block in here with a hole in the bottom, as you saw previously, and so that locks that in. But this gusset here is exactly 1 inch on these 2 dimensions, and this 2x2 bracket is exactly 2 inches. And so by letting this 2-inch bracket come down and butt up against this, I know that this distance is exactly 3 inches. And so now what I can do over here on this side or I don't have a bracket here at the bottom of this piece, because this can be supported in up here additionally, so I don't really need another bracket down here. It's a very strong position where it is. I'm just going to set one of these right in here like that, and then just simply let this lower down to there, right? And now I know that's exactly 3 inches, and so I've got that set, and well, I had it set. A little hard doing this with one hand and holding the camera and a tool in my hand, and trying to get this also to rotate because it's a little tight here. So I need to loosen that up, get this rotated in position. So now what I could do is always tighten this in, get this thing so it's perfectly level and tight and positioned correctly here. And then once that's done, I can check my level all the way across, get this one tight, and then I know that that is basically my exact as it should be all the way across. So that's how I do that. One of my little tricks, save a little time. And the end result is that yes, it's perfection, right on down to the 10th of a degree as this level meter measures. And part of the way that I did get that is also because of the way I mounted my cabinets, but I made sure that on both sides they are exactly level. So that's one, those are hopefully some very helpful tips to you for installing 80/20, and I got a lot more tips coming up and information on as I start to install my water system and hot water system and finish up this cabinetry. So excited that you're watching. Thank you for sharing and subscribing.